Hi, Aurora. Thanks for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Aurora. I'm currently a senior at Stanford, studying economics, anthropology, and minor in symbolic systems. Great meeting you
Cool.
today.
Yeah, it was great to meet you. And I brought you on today to talk about the Pear Fellows program, which I saw that you joined this year. Kind of curious, like, how did you learn about that program to start?
Yeah, so I joined Pear last year during my junior year, and I actually learned about Pear my freshman year. So my freshman year was COVID, and I did a boot camp with ACES. That was like one of the entrepreneurial societies on campus. And then Pear, like the founder of Pear, gave a talk to all of us, and that's how I knew about like Pear and the fellow programs. And then so junior year, I decided to get more involved with like student venture in the US. Like I did venture capital in different countries before, and I thought I really wanted to like delve deeper into that space. So I applied and got in.
Cool. And can you give like an overview of like the application process? I saw the written application on the website, but what happens after that?
So I think like Pear recruits fellow from certain universities. If I remember correct, it's like Stanford, Berkeley, a couple of schools on the East Coast, like Penn, Harvard, Columbia, MIT. And then I think like different schools have their own recruiting timelines. For Stanford, it's typically like the first 2 weeks of the fall quarter. That's like end of September, start of October. And then like typically they do info sessions on campus. You chat with them, submit your applications. It's usually like a few short answer questions and a video. Talks about like your favorite company or like something, a trend that you find interesting. And then if you get selected for interview, you talk to the head of builders, which is basically the person in charge of like student programs, like student VC and builder programs. And if you pass that round, you get another round of like final round. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what types of questions are they asking you when you talk with like the head of builders and the final round?
I think it varies each year. So last year it wasn't like the head of builders, it was a different like venture associate who interviewed me. We
Yeah.
mostly talked about like the stuff that I was involved on campus because I was like previously involved in a couple of like startup business organizations on campus, and like where do I find the most talented founders, if I have like unique sourcing strategies that other people don't have, and sort of like how do I maintain founder relationships with the people that I think are like worth investing in, and also like general like industry trends, like startups or sectors that I find interesting. But it's like super casual, like 10-15 minute conversation.
Mhm. And you mentioned you joined your junior year. Like,
Yeah.
were most of the people in your cohort also like juniors and seniors, or were there people earlier in their
Yeah,
college?
so in my
Yeah.
cohort, we have like 5 fellows. Two of them are juniors, one is senior, one is sophomore. Two are sophomores. So I think it's a nice balance.
Gotcha. And when you say your cohort, do you mean just Stanford students? Is it pretty like
Yeah.
refined? Like, okay.
But I know like Berkeley also has 5 fellows, and one of them, I'm pretty sure like when they joined, they were a freshman.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And when you join the program, I guess like what happens? It sounds like they do some sort of training. There's like a summit. Can you give maybe an overview of like what actually happens when you join?
And so there's a summit every year for the new fellows. That's like every November, where they fly everyone to the Pear office in Menlo Park. And then after that, it's pretty much like sourcing on campus and talking to founders on your campus. So for us, like last year, our main job was like facilitating like different demo days for hackathons. So I worked as a judge for Tree Hacks as well as like Friends and Family. That was like a builders organization on campus where they have like demo days every quarter, and Pear was like one of their sponsors. So that was like my main job last year, and we also hosted a Pear competition. And then we're mostly in charge of like interviewing founders, like encouraging people to apply from Stanford and like doing the initial screening of those founders. And I think this year, like we're trying to do more like on-campus outreach and kind of like making this a more structured program. So we're thinking of adding like a campus newsletter for people who are interested in building to like subscribe to it, and then maybe like also collaborate with people from other campuses. I know like Berkeley people are also doing their own newsletter, and for us, we plan to like interview founders and also like just list a bunch of like interesting startup activities for people to join.
Gotcha. And when you like source student founders from Stanford or other campuses and you meet with them and you're excited about them, I guess like how do you work with the like actual Pear VC team? Is it like you write up about like why you're excited about the company, you pass the deal to them to kind of like review it? Or I guess like how does that actually work in practice?
I think like typically you source founders through like founder events or activities. And then because we host a lot of activities like speaker series or also like just founders mixers and like meetups. If we found something interesting, like we usually just like send it to the head of builders. But like for me, like I'm really interested in healthcare, so I also work with the healthcare partner a lot. And then like some people approach me because like they were specifically building healthcare, and I usually like review their deck before I send it to the partner. And if I think this is interesting, I then like connect them with the partner. And sometimes I join the deal flow call too.
Cool. And you mentioned earlier you did some like VC internships or gigs in other countries, and you're excited about Pear because you wanted to do this in the US. Kind of curious, just like what did you find as sort of like the most valuable part of the program for you in terms of like your own learning and your own growth?
Yeah, for sure. So before junior year, my sophomore summer, I worked for a venture in Brazil. And like one of my mentors was a previous Pear Fellow. She also graduated from Stanford. So that's how I realized like the world of venture capital is really small. Like literally like everyone's so connected. And before that internship, like during COVID, I worked for a venture capital firm in China. And so yeah, it's just like it's a really small circle and everyone's kind of like everyone know each other, and like people talk about like people change deals even if it's like in different countries. And I feel like for me, like obviously like the venture capital scene in Asia and Latin America is very different from like what people are curious about in the US. And I feel like when I was working at Brazil, like a lot of the stuff they care about was really similar to like the tech scene in Asia back in 2015. And so I was like, that was an interesting trend, but I wanted to see like what, you know, like what do people care about now in the Silicon Valley compared to like people in Asia and Brazil or even like other parts of the world. And I feel like since like I'm here like in the heart of innovation, like why not just like do something in the valley?
Yeah. And then kind of curious if you have a good sense of just like what they're looking for people who actually make it into the program. It seems like they're really interested in like what are other things that you're doing on campus and like how you're engaged with entrepreneurship scene. So that maybe seems like one of them. Sounds like you had some like VC exposure and experience before the program. Like what would you, I guess, like say is like what they're looking for in terms of who would make a good fellow for Pear?
I think like typically people they take all have like previous venture experience, even though like they say like it's not really required, but like just based on my experiences, like people I work with, we've all like worked at other venture capital firms before. Maybe they're like smaller, like one of the other Stanford fellows worked for like a climate tech VC. But I think like they definitely want you to be like interested in investing and like know how to deal source and know how to like evaluate a company. Plus like I think like you have to be a people person, like or like you need to know like how to start a conversation and how to like quickly get to know someone within a very short period of time. I think that's why like the interviews are all super short, like 10-15 minutes.
Cool. And I guess like one thing I'm thinking about is just that like venture capital is like a very competitive industry to get into. So kind of curious like how you broke in to get that experience so that you could eventually get this opportunity with Pear.
For me, like I was in China due to COVID, so I sort of just like took advantage of that and worked for a Chinese venture capital firm. And that's how I really like became involved in like tech and venture. And I think like I didn't really like intentionally build up my venture network. I was sort of more like exploring because I knew that I really like, first of all, I really like tech, but I'm like more interested in like earlier stages than later stages. And also I really like talking to people. So I feel like that combination kind of like makes me an ideal candidate for venture capital. And then I was like, I want experience working in a different country. So I spent my sophomore summer in Brazil, and I was like looking for the industry I want to work in. Probably like venture capital is still like the most ideal job for me. So that was like kind of like how I make sense of like my route. But I'm pretty sure like each like other fellows have their own like unique ways of like breaking into venture. And I think like another like pretty common way I see is like building your own startup or like just start building something on campus.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like if you're a founder, then I think like pivoting from founder to VC is also a pretty like common pipeline.
Cool. And then you mentioned there's like some overlap between the cohorts. So you mentioned like working with like Berkeley and other schools. I'm kind of curious if like there's any overlap between the other pair programs. So I know they have like female founder circles, I know they have the accelerator program. Like, is there any overlap between the other things that pair is running?
Not really in terms of like the internal peer programs, but I think like we're trying to like bring the garage fellows and venture fellows together more. And also like we host a lot of like speaker series where we see like other fellows who are involved as well. And we also do like Pear X accelerators twice a year, and that's usually when you meet like other people who are involved in Pear.
Cool. And then was curious about the alumni. Like there's been, I don't know, lots of alumni that have landed full-time gigs at good firms. Are they still involved in some ways, either as like come back to speak to recent cohorts or involved in a Slack, or how does it actually work?
I'm not really sure. I don't think there's any alumni involvement, but I do know that like some current like parent people on the investment team were past fellows, but they were like MBA fellows.
Gotcha. And then last question is like, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to know for someone who's considering applying to this Pear Fellows program?
I would say like maybe not for a Pear Fellow, but generally for like students interested in venture capital, like start building your network as early as you can, whether it's like starting a blog or I don't know, like getting coffee with founders on campus or like starting a unique club. I think like there's multiple ways that you can get involved with venture, and like certainly you don't have to be a venture fellow or like get a venture capital internship, because I feel like the headcounts, like usually they don't have a lot of headcounts for those roles. But I do know a lot of people who like even like start your own fund. Like there's just like so many ways to get involved with like early stage investing. So definitely like don't let that fellow role stop you.
Cool. I love that. Yeah. Explore all your paths. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Aurora, for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for chatting with me.